I love it when it says you're alive now, but my screen is still black, so I don't ever know if I should talk. So I just hang on a minute. And I'm shaking, it looks like, so give it a minute. I don't know why it's moving a bunch. Hopefully it stops. Hopefully it's not shaking on your end. I had to kind of rig it a little bit different whenever I was trying to hook up the camera this time. So that's a little bit of why it's shaking, and I'm always rethinking how I'm going to do stuff after I started it, because like I said, now it's kind of shaking a little bit, so I apologize. It's not terrible, but that means I just can't move a whole lot while I'm talking, which is hard for somebody who likes to talk with their hands. So I'm going to try to catch up a little bit, because it has been a while. I think it's been about 5 weeks since I've been on, but kind of as I was looking through notifications and things, I think the last thing I posted on my actual personal stuff was like 6 weeks ago, maybe, on Instagram anyhow. So I know it's been close to about 5 weeks. It's kind of been a combination of things. I had been sick, I had to start working, and I know that when I had been on here before, I had mentioned working, and that I might be a little delayed on some things just because I am working full time and then I have kids, and so I originally dedicated all of my time to doing this, and now I've had to cut back because of the legal stuff going on. I don't have a choice right now other than to do what I'm supposed to be doing, and so I've been trying to figure out how to restructure my time. That way I can do what the Lord has called me to do. I just don't have as much time to kind of pull it off as I had before, and so I've been trying to figure out how to sit down and be able to do that, but then I'd gotten sick, and then my kids had gotten sick, and so there's a little bit of that, and then I've had court. There's just been a lot going on, and so I haven't had time. I was going to set up some posts and kind of let you guys know what was going on. There were a few days I got home from work that I just went straight to bed, just wore out, mentally exhausted and physically exhausted. Just there's been a lot going on, and some of it I can't fully talk about to a degree. I will be so glad when I can, because it's very stressful right now, because I feel like I'm neglecting the thing that's very important to me. And so I wanted everybody to understand that I haven't forgotten this. Part of it's been having that little bit of a guilty conscience too when I have had the time to get on here. I've had some guilt kind of coming along with posting because of just the things that are going on right now and my lack of prioritizing and just being overwhelmed and exhausted because of all the things that I'm having to do. That's really messed with allowing this to be my priority that it was, and it's very frustrating. And so there was some shame that came along with that, and I had sat there and was getting ready to get on one day, and I was just like, I can't even do it. I feel guilty. I feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing it. I have this lack of worth. It's very difficult when you've been through some of the things I've had to go through the last year, and then everything is going good and I love doing this, and then it becomes a source of something that people are criticizing me for, and so I continued to do it until I literally could not because of time. And then when I tried to make time, I just felt so guilty I couldn't get on here. And so had a little pep talk at the beginning of the week, and my homework assignment that I was given was to make sure that I got back to doing this because I was a lot happier when I was doing it. And I can't argue with that. Serving God is the most important thing to me. And when I'm not doing His work, I have this lack in my life, this emptiness that's just not there. I can't fill it with anything else. And the negativity begins to flood my entire life. And it's amazing how Satan gets in and will completely try to destroy families and churches and things. And it's something I've talked about the last few times that I've been on here. But it came down to actually tearing me away from doing this because of part of tearing my family apart. This was part of it. And getting scrutinized for doing this has been very difficult. I've had to lean on God quite a bit, and then it just got to that point where I'm like, I have no time to do anything. And I can remember being that person that would tell other people that were saying, I don't even have time to pray, I don't have time to read my Bible, and I would say, if you would just put that as priority, God would make more time. And I knew that because I had done it before, and God provided more time for me to do the things that I needed to get done when I put Him first. However, the guilt came when I was not doing that. The negativity crept in when I was not doing that. And so I've had the last few weeks that I've just been overwhelmed, depressed. I have a completely different life situation than I had several weeks back. In a sense, I feel like I don't have one. And it's very frustrating. And so what's been going on has affected my kids in such a way that we really just don't have a lot that we can do. We're just kind of limited, and it's frustrating. It'd be nice to get back to having our life back. And so this is going to have to be priority. I'm going to make it priority. I said that before, do it, and then something hits me, and Satan just gets me, and I'd like to blame it all on him, but I am also responsible for the decisions that I make, and I try to be the no excuses kind of person here lately. I can't blame things on everybody else. I have to own up to what is my responsibility. And so one of the going themes the last several weeks actually started when my kids and I were talking about our normal Christmas routine where we watch this particular movie. The kids kind of don't like it. I've watched it since I was a little girl, but we were talking about it one day, and in it has the Night Before Christmas story, and the phrase in there when the man is talking about how he saw Santa Claus and he laughed when he saw him in spite of himself. For some reason, like I heard it, and it was like God said, just hang on to that. And I thought, well, that's kind of ridiculous. I've heard this same story all of my life. I'm 34 years old. This is kind of, but okay. And then I kept hearing the phrase in spite of, or in spite of myself, just in spite of. And spiteful. Spite became a word that was like, it seemed like in everybody's vocabulary the last 5 weeks or so. And then I realized that that was why God wanted me to hang on to it. And so the last several weeks, there's been a lot going on. And when that happened, I had actually wrote down in spite of myself. And that's all I had. And I've held on to it for the last 5 weeks, waiting to do this. Partially not having the courage to do it. But diving into what it actually meant, and hopefully I could get through it without any tears. I've not been that fortunate lately. They just come out randomly all the time. So I kind of giggle because the phrase from that story was, I laughed as I saw him in spite of myself. And I thought, anytime I think of the word spite, I think negative. And how did that play out in that story? If he's laughing in spite of himself, what does that mean? Because it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So my number one thing is always definitions. And I have some notes this time. Maybe not as many as I probably would have liked to have had, because I'm kind of winging it, because I wanted to fill you guys in on a little bit. And I probably will throughout this, because it has a lot to do with what's been going on. But there were a lot of definitions, partially because of the phrases that go along with the word spite. But a desire to hurt, annoy, or offend someone. So, spite, it does not sound like a very positive word. And anytime I've ever heard it, it's not been a positive word. So it being in a kid's Christmas storybook in a positive way, so to speak, I was trying to figure that one out. In spite of is an actual phrase, and there was a definition for it, shockingly. And it was in defiance or contempt of. So, thinking of in spite of myself, in defiance of myself. So he was laughing even though he wasn't trying to, is basically what it was saying. So, he didn't want to laugh, but he did. But he tried not to. So in spite of himself trying not to, he did it anyway. And then it was like, God smacked me in the face and went, hey, stupid. So here we go. How often do we do things in spite of ourselves? In defiance, basically. There is a lot of rebellion in us naturally. It's the sin nature thing that comes along with it. But in spite of ourselves, which really isn't the whole theme I'm going with here, but I found it interesting. So in defiance of myself, no matter how hard I try not to do something, I tend to do it. And I remember in Romans, Paul has mentioned several times, in the way he words it's kind of confusing, but the gist of it is he tries not to do the things that he knows that are wrong, but he ends up doing them anyway, and when he tries to do right, he doesn't. And so it's frustrating to him. And I got to thinking about that and was going, well, that's definitely the definition of in spite of myself. So in defiance of what we're trying to do, we tend not to do what it is that we're trying to keep from doing. And especially when it comes to sin, when it comes to, in a general sense, I can't even pinpoint it to sin, but there are little things like kind of controlling emotions. And no matter how many times, you're like, oh, I'm not going to get mad this time about something I got mad about last time, or I'm not going to handle it this way next time. And you try, but in spite of yourself, you manage to screw it up again and do it the same way you did before. And so I kind of really, that hit home for me, because I like to change things. And so when something's not working, I will change it. However, lately when I try that, it's like I just end up going back to screwing it up. Like, I'm not going to get upset about this time. Next time it happens, I'm going to handle it this way. But in the heat of the moment, that's not usually how I'll handle it. And a lot of times I don't have time to think about it. I don't take that 5 seconds to pray and stop and go, how do I handle this? Which is typically how I do things. But my life has been turned upside down, and I don't have that availability anymore to just take a moment and really have that one-on-one time with God that I used to, because I am busy all the time. I get, if I'm lucky, 4 hours in the evening to eat supper, spend time with the kids before we have to go to bed and start the next day. If I'm lucky. We're busy, and I just very rarely get the time that I used to. And then I get the weekends, and most of the weekends are spent catching up on the things that we didn't get to do through the week, like cleaning the house or doing laundry, or deep cleaning the house, I guess I should say. It's one of those things that it's, there's just not a lot of time anymore. And so I sit there and I'm like, how am I going to get all of this done? So what ends up happening is I just react. And I did away with reacting immediately a long time ago. If anything, I've been known to just kind of be quiet when something's going on. And so that way I'm praying about it and I'm thinking about it before I react. Not been the case the last few weeks. I've just had to make a decision right away. I've not had an opportunity to really think. I just have to act at the moment. And then it's kind of bled over into every other area of my life, which is not a good thing. And so this really hit pretty hard, especially when you're hanging on to it and haven't got to study it, and you just know that it's going to be God giving you the what for and his way of giving you the what for. So as I proceeded to move on, in spite of is the phrase for the word despite. I kind of wondered about that because it has the word spite in it as well. So it's just basically the short version. The definition of despite is feeling or attitude of despising, disadvantage, or detriment. So it's somewhat similar. But a lot of times what happens with you using the phrase, despite everything that's happened, I moved on, I'm still standing, I'm this, or this happened, we'll say despite, or we will occasionally maybe say in spite of everything that's happened, this is where I'm at. But a lot of times we use the word despite. Despite everything, here I am. So yeah, despite everything, I'm still alive and breathing. I can be thankful for that. But despite all of those things, the main despite is, despite myself, I am still alive and breathing. What goes along with some of the things that I looked up. Yesterday at work, we have a meeting prior to going into class. And I had this word on my heart that I don't know why I'd had it on my heart. Teaching kids, and you get words and they're working on certain things, and science have been something I've been helping a few of the students with, and catalyst have been stuck in my head. Well, our devotion yesterday morning had the word catalyst in it, and I'm just sitting there hung up on it. I'm like, okay, well, clearly God was pointing that one out too. And so I looked up the definition of catalyst. I mean, I knew what it was in the chemistry sense of catalyst, but catalyst, and the other form away from science, is a person or thing that precipitates an event. So, let me just give you some insight to the word precipitate. That definition is done or made without careful consideration. So, a catalyst is a person or thing that does something without careful consideration that can cause an event. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is Satan. Like, duh. I'm sure he probably considers what he's doing anyhow, because he's well thought out. His intent is to still kill and destroy. However, as humans, we don't give careful consideration to much, as we should anyhow. So, how often are we the catalyst? Whether we're the catalyst to ourselves or the catalyst to somebody else's problems. So with the stuff going on in my life, and that word spite being used more than I care to hear, when Catalyst came up, I was blown away because I'm like, wow, that makes perfect sense. It's devastating when somebody or something, and usually it's somebody, it's very rarely that it's something, because it's usually somebody that causes a thing to happen, but can have an intent to do one thing without considering the effect that it has on everything else. And so, as a catalyst, and you do something without careful consideration, you end up doing something, and it's a spiteful something. As a catalyst, it's spiteful. There's malice in it. Some of the definitions in spite were malice. Malevolence, I think, was one of them. Any definition that went along with it wasn't good. And so, as I'm sitting there thinking about it, we can be that catalyst for somebody else, or we can be on the receiving end of somebody being a catalyst and completely just turning somebody's life upside down. And it's one thing to have a grudge, which the Bible says we can't have, and you're affecting more than the person you're after. And so in my situation, it's affected more than just me. It's affecting my kids, and nothing bothers me more than when my kids are affected by it. I'm not a perfect mom, never claimed to be a perfect mom. I would give up anything in my life in a heartbeat for my kids, because I wouldn't want them to go through more than they've had to go through in the last several years. So them having to deal with the things they're dealing with now, I feel like isn't fair, and there's not much I can do about it because it is out of my control. And so it's hard when you watch your children hurt because somebody else decided to do something without consideration of how it was going to affect everybody else. And I'm not too terrible when it comes to feeling attacked. I don't like feeling attacked, but there's things that I can put off until you've managed to use your attack against me and it's affected my kids. You can hate me all you want, but when it hurts my kids in return, that's where I have to draw the line. And so I began to think about how we react to a catalyst, or how we end up being the catalyst. So the first thing is, the Bible has at least 57 examples that I could find of spite. There are some scriptures, there's only one in the King James Version that uses the word spite, and we'll go over those in a minute, but the word haste is mentioned 54 times. There is some coincidence there, in my opinion, with the 57 and 54 as far as haste and spite goes. We are hasty making decisions, and as a catalyst that does something out of spite, we do it without careful consideration. If we weren't in a hurry to do such a thing, there'd be careful consideration. So haste goes hand in hand with spite. And so the fact that they're both in the 50s doesn't seem unusual to me. I think that there was a purpose in that. And I look at several different things when I'm thinking about spite and thinking about haste, because there are lots of examples where we get in a hurry to do what we think we need to do, what feels good at the moment. However, being angry, being upset, and reacting right away only does damage. And so, Old Testament one of the major consequences of acting in haste like that and not waiting for God. And made me think in spite of myself was Moses. So whenever God told him to talk to the rock, and he was so frustrated with everything going on, instead of listening to God and being a little on the patient side, he just struck that rock. He was mad. He done gave up. He's like, I'm fed up with all of them. They won't shut up, and they're doing nothing but complaining, and I'm done. God's given me the answer, and I'm just going to go ahead and smack that rock. The problem is, yeah, the water came out, except he got a punishment because he didn't listen fully to God. God told him to talk to the rock first and then strike the rock. So he completely jumped to the next thing just to get it over with because he was exhausted. He was wore out from dealing with everything he's dealt with. So he just jumped to the next thing because the door was open. The result of that was he didn't get to go see the promised land. He ended up dying outside of there. And so his punishment for acting in haste, even though, you know, in a sense, maybe he wasn't being sinful, but disobeying God is sinful. And so here he is, God telling him, this is what you've got to do, the order you do it in. And he just jumped straight to the next thing because he's just fed up. We've all been in that place where we're just fed up. We just want it over with. So we react to get the ball rolling. When we do that and we don't take the time to pray and give consideration to what God would have us do, what are we possibly missing out on because we've done that? That's a prime example. And all I can think is I bet he thought, in spite of myself, I've done missed out on the promised land. I get to see it from over here, but I don't get to go in there. Because in spite of myself, the defiance that I had in the flesh caused me to miss out on that opportunity. I think about all the times throughout my life that I've done something like that, and then over the years how I've learned not to handle things that way. And now I'm 34 and I'm going, how did you manage in the last 5 weeks to revert to that same behavior? Life and Satan affecting your life the way that he can, if you are not strong enough in the Lord and leaning on him for everything, you are going to just absolutely cave to everything. Not to sin necessarily, but you're just going to cave. You're giving up. You're exhausted. I have not been this mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted in a very long time. But I know that because I'm fighting a, I guess, emotional battle, in a physical sense, and, you know, I struggle with my health on top of that, and then you add trying to just live life and take care of my kids, and sometimes you just get exhausted and then you let that guard down, and next thing you know, you're not where you should be with your walk, and you're an easy target to just cave. And so when I say cave, like I said, I'm not talking about necessarily caving to sin. I'm talking straight up reacting in a way you wouldn't normally react. So, you know, usually you are handling your kids well when they're disobeying, so you do your typical punishment. But if you're overworked, overwhelmed, you're tired or whatever, instead maybe you're screaming at the top of your lungs at them. It's usually a good indicator you're needing to be spending more time with God, because the world has taken over your reactions in a sense. I mean, you're responsible for your actions. However, you've allowed so much of the world to bring you down that you just react in a way that you wouldn't normally. And I've found myself being in that spot that I'm just overwhelmed by what is going on in the worldly sense, that the battles that I have to fight that are of the world, that have not been a daily struggle through my life, that have come up, recently, it's like you get wore out, and unless I'm relying on God like I should be, what's going to happen is I'm just going to cave. I'm going to react in a completely different manner. I'm going to sulk up where normally I would just go take an hour, pray, and be good. But when you stop taking that time to spend with God, your reactions become irrational, for one, and the negativity creeps in and you've lost all your optimism. And so being careful to make sure that Satan hasn't came in and stole your joy. Doesn't mean you have to be happy 24/7, but when you are nothing but negative, your joy is gone. And so I found myself in that spot where there's some joy there to a degree, but it's not like it was. And so I'd like to blame it on the situations and the people involved in the situations, but I technically can't. I'm responsible for that. I am responsible for taking the time out and praying and spending time with God and asking Him to help me react the way that I need to, as opposed to the way that I might be. And so if I have time or not is irrelevant. If I don't make time for God, the rest of my life is going to be spent in spite of myself being a catalyst, or being on the end of a catalyst, and having nothing but chaos and being overrun and overtaken by the world and exhausted all the time. And until I get where I'm making sure that God's my number one priority and getting rejuvenated on a daily basis by Him, He'll restore the time that I'm taking out for Him to give me back to do the things that I need to do. But I'm not going to get the energy, and I'm not going to get the things done I need to get done just running on empty. And that's what I'm doing, is running on empty. And that's never a good place to be, but we get ourselves there. And that's where this in spite of. Yeah, in spite of everything, I'm still here. However, in spite of myself, I'm doing things I shouldn't be, which is neglecting my time with God that I used to take out. Now I'm lucky if I spend that hour once a week, where I was spending that every day. And I look at it, I've got 4 hours. I've got 4 hours when I get off work, and then before bedtime. There's dinner to make, getting ready for school the next day, and homework, and spending some time with the kids, and I gotta cram all of that in. Where's my time for God? So I have to make it a priority. So do I take it out of my sleep? Absolutely. Because you know what? If I do, He's going to make me feel refreshed and have enough energy the next day anyway, even if I lose that hour of sleep for spending it with Him. I know that from experience. However, I'm being defiant towards myself. I am doing things despite knowing better. And that's a horrible attitude to have. I've got to get back where I need to be, because that's what the Lord needs out of me. That's what my kids need out of me. That's what my job needs out of me. That's what all of my relationships need out of me. Right now, I could use a ton of prayer. Got a lot going on between now and January. I have a few more court dates I have to go to. Hoping it's over pretty soon. Mostly because, my kids are wore out and tired of going through all of it. So it's taken a toll on my little family, and, some of the changes have been great, and I'm not knocking them. It's just, we're very overwhelmed, and I know until I make these things a priority, these random episodes of crying and getting overwhelmed are not going to go away until I go back to doing what I know is right, which is spending my time with God and making it a priority, because everything else in my life will fail. And I know that. And if I didn't know that from experience, the Bible gives more than, I'm just going to say one example, but it gives probably more than 100 examples of what happens when you fail to give your time to God. He needs it, but you need it more. And I can guarantee that most of you know that when you do give that time, He does end up rewarding you. No different than giving your tithes to the church. You end up getting blessed. And so it's kind of the same thing, and I know better. And so I encourage you over the next few weeks, especially with Christmas coming up. I know Christmas is hard for several of us for whatever reason, whether it's not having specific loved ones or being alone. I know this Christmas is going to be different for us, not having the family around that we normally do. Life is just not like it was. And so, right now is the most ideal time to be leaning on God every single day, increasing your relationship with Him so that you can function through all of this, because this is a hard time. Today is the 12th, which 2 years ago to the day, we moved my grandma in with me, knowing she was dying, and she died 10 days after we moved her in. Today is a very rough day. I feel like the last month has been like that. So, I apologize for being gone. I'm here. I just have struggled a lot emotionally, and I've had to go to court and deal with attorneys and things, and so I could definitely use the prayers for encouragement, and my kids need prayers. Satan is doing a number, especially with the holidays coming. So I'm praying for you guys. It's a lot easier for me to pray for everybody else than it is to pray for myself. So, again, I apologize for being gone. I'm here. I am setting aside time to get on here and post. Some of them may be a little more emotional than normal, and I like the silly posts because I like to laugh. I probably need it more now than I usually do. So in the meantime, I'm back, and keep my family in prayers. I will be praying for you all, and my website's still up. I've neglected a little bit of everything, so I'm getting on to fix as much as I can and dedicate some time to the blog and the website and my Facebook and my Instagram. So I'm here, and I will get all of my notifications and things turned back on. If you need anything, I strongly encourage you, just like I'm preaching to the choir right now. I need this just as much as anybody, but I encourage you to spend the next few weeks doing everything you can to strengthen your walk with God, and dedicating a specific amount of time every day to talking with Him, to keep your sanity, to keep you in line, to keep you from being hasty, to keep you from being a catalyst, to keep you from doing things in spite of yourself. Because that's not what God wants for us. He wants the best, and we know that. So with that being said, do your best to get there. and allow Him to give you the best by giving Him your best and your time. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I will be talking to you guys soon. So I love you all, and God bless.